Hello, Turks and Caicos. EJ Saunders here. On the 1st of April, I did a post where I broke down and explained the Premier's COVID-19 stimulus package. I will now speak more to it. Before I get started, I must point out that when I stated that in order to qualify for a grant, hospitality workers, self-employed persons, and MSMEs would have had to be laid off, ceased operations, or terminated by the 16th of March. The requirement is actually since the 16th of March. My apologies for the slight error. However, it doesn't change the figures in my analysis, as the figures reflect a scenario where all 10,000 hospitality workers, 1,261 self-employed persons, and 2,000 MSMEs qualify for the grant. To recap, the government stimulus package includes $13.5 million for grants for hospitality workers and self-employed persons, $10 million for grants for MSMEs, $500,000 for social welfare, $5 million concessions for villa owners under the refurbishment policy, $178,000 in water charges waived, $6.5 million in write-offs of long outstanding water bills, $1 million in waivers of hotel, restaurant, and tourism taxes, $1.3 million in waivers of accommodation taxes, and $119,000 in a 50% reduction of planning fees, for a total of $38.1 million. Now, this does not include the waivers on duties for basic food items and essential medical supplies for 2 months, a reduction of 50% on stamp duties, and a waiver on customs duties on construction materials for 3 months. To fund the proposed stimulus package, the Premier stated that the, and I quote, government will run a deficit budget of $103 million drawn on $73 million savings initially, draw on an already in place loan facility of $15 million, secure a credit line facility, end quote. For clarity, running a deficit budget means that the government intends to spend more money in a financial year than is expected to take in through taxes, customs duties, work permit fees, etc. The government's financial year starts on the 1st of April every year and ends on the 31st of March the following year. So, for example, the upcoming government budget, which will be debated shortly in the House of Assembly, will be for the years 2020 to 2021. So when the Premier said that the government will run a deficit budget of $103.1 million, what she is saying is that between the 1st of April 2020 to the 31st of March 2021, the government intends to spend $103.1 million more than the total revenue that it believes that it will collect during the same period. To make up for the shortfall, the Premier stated that she intends to use $73 million of the approximately $200 million in government savings and finance the remaining $30.1 million through loans, $15 million of which is already secured, and the remaining $15.1 million from a new credit line. At our press conference on the 10th of March, and in my 12th of March release, among other recommendations, I stated that, and I quote, if required, the government should submit a deficit budget for the financial year 2021 rather than require civil servants to endure cuts to their jobs or salaries, end quote. While we're happy that the government has decided to operate a deficit budget this financial year, the way that they intend on covering the $103.1 million budget shortfall is not advisable. Instead of utilizing only $73 million of the approximately $200 million in reserves to cover the budget shortfall, the government should finance the full $103.1 million shortfall. There are two main reasons for this. First, in the years 2010 to 2011, the interim government took out a loan for over $200 million, which came with steep austerity measures, including the requirement to have a UK government-appointed CFO. During the period 2012 to 2016, the austerity measures ensured that the loan got paid down significantly, but it left little to nothing for the elected government to put back into the economy. The austerity measures did not achieve a balance between loan repayments and government investments into the economy. Taking out a loan now, especially when it's not necessary, run the risk of putting the country back under such conditions. We certainly don't need that. Second, despite the fact that many central banks around the world are cutting interest rates at this time to boost spending in order to fight off the looming global recession, the sudden and abrupt need for cash by many countries and large corporations will result in a demand for loans outstripping the supply of funds, which will drive up the cost of borrowing, both in terms of interest rates and the conditions that will be attached to the loans. The cheapest source of funds that the government can access right now is its own, and it should use it to finance the budget shortfall this financial year. If the government is able to benefit from rock bottom interest rates this financial year, and the loan terms are favorable, the government should then, and only then, look at negotiating a credit line that can be tapped into, if and only if it is required to cover any future budget deficits. Now, more than likely, the economy will not bounce back enough for the government to return to a budget surplus in financial year 2021 to 2022, at least not without cutting costs. While cutting costs, example, civil servants' jobs or salaries, may be considered in financial year 21-22, my recommendation is that the government shouldn't do so, and if required, the government should operate a deficit budget again in financial year 21-22. With very modest growth in the economy in financial year 21-22, the government will be able to greatly reduce the deficit level to a manageable level. However, if at the beginning of financial year 21-22, the government wants to take out a loan to cover a budget shortfall, it should do so at that time. That is when the terms and conditions will be more favorable than they are today. Doing this will ensure that the government is able to comfortably finance any budget deficits and without the need for economy-stifling austerity measures. The stimulus package isn't as large as the Premier made it out to be, but it's the public's money, and as such, transparency around its administration is a must. We are therefore calling on the government to A, have the COVID-19 stimulus package independently audited within 6 months of the end of the pandemic and make the audit report available for public viewing, and B, make public by publishing on a monthly basis the details of how the grants and benefits that make up the stimulus package was allocated up to that point. For clarity, we are calling on the government to, on a monthly basis, 1, list the names of the hospitality workers and self-employed persons who receive grants and the amounts received. 2, list the names of the MSMEs that receive grants and the amounts received. 3, list the names of the villa owners who receive concessions under the refurbishment policy and the total value of the concessions received. 4, list the names of the hotels and restaurants that were allowed to retain the hotel, restaurant, and tourism taxes that they collected on behalf of government and the amounts that each hotel and restaurant were allowed to retain. 5, list the names of the hotels that were allowed to retain the accommodation taxes that they collected on behalf of government and the amounts that each hotel was allowed to retain. 6, list the names of the persons and companies that benefited from the 50% reduction on planning fees, along with the value of the reduction that each received. 7, list the names of the persons and companies that benefited from the reduction of 50% on stamp duties, along with the value of the reduction that each received. And 8, list the names of the persons and companies that benefited from the waiver on customs duties on construction material, along with the value of the waiver that each received. Especially during this time of uncertainty, every expenditure by the government must be in the best interest of the people. The government has stated that it will run a $103.1 million deficit budget this financial year, and there's a high probability that it will need to run another deficit budget in the next financial year, that is financial year 21-22. To ensure that every dollar spent or forego is in the best interest of the public, it is important that the government implement bold but prudent fiscal measures surrounded by competency, accountability, and transparency. The next few months will bring economic uncertainty, but your next PNP government has the experience to bring us safely through it. In closing, our condolences go out to everyone who lost loved ones over the last few days. May their souls rest in peace and rise in glory. I trust that you and your loved ones are keeping safe by staying at home, and I pray that those of you who may be suffering from COVID-19, that you have a full and speedy recovery. May God continue to watch over us, and may He bring us through these trying times.